All right, thanks for tuning in to another edition of the OFN Meeting Room on the Our Lads Football Network. We're going to talk Carolina Panthers football, and we're going to do that with Tim Weaver, the managing editor for the Panthers Wire at usatoday.com. Tim, thanks for talking to us again.
No problem, anytime.
All right, Tim. Well, right here I've got the Our Lads draft guide. It's still available. Great time for Panthers fans who are watching or listening to this show. You can still order this at ourlads.com. And the Panthers have a total of 7 draft picks that are, I believe, all 7 are in the guide, and a loaded list of free agents as well. And really name free agents, players with good careers. There are several of those that are in this guide, too, that you can check out their profile at ourlads.com, and I'll definitely be using this for the show as a reference point. All right, so Tim, how did the fans feel about the draft? Because after like the first 3 or 4 picks, and knowing Matt Rule and his DNA in college, it was so. I mean, it was just automatically I'm going, okay, yeah, I could see this. Matt Rule is trying to build his steel curtain defense here. I mean, it's defense, 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 and more defense.
Yeah, I kind of saw it coming. The way that the offseason unfolded, pretty much all of their free agency additions, with a few small exceptions, were on offense. You had Teddy Bridgewater, Robbie Anderson, signed a couple of guards, but I could kind of see it coming. I did an all defense mock draft at one point in early March, I think, and I didn't imagine that was just an exercise. I never thought they would actually go through and do an all defense draft. It really does make sense given the number of holes that they had. They need to rely on these guys. It's always a crapshoot. You don't know how well rookies are going to do in the NFL. Usually not very well, but they're going to have to rely on this class more than most teams are.
Well, let's get right to it. Starting on defense with Derek Brown, and I remember going through my mock draft the day before and saying, okay, I got to believe that this is either going to be Okudah to Detroit or Derek Brown to Detroit and the other player to Carolina. So when Okudah went to Detroit, Derek Brown sure made a lot of sense with Carolina at 7.
Yeah, he was the most popular mock pick to the Panthers all year. I think Mel Kiper had him first. So throughout the draft season, you saw his name connected with them a lot. But I was honestly expecting them to take Isaiah Simmons. Once I saw that he was going to be available, I went ahead and started writing that up. I said, okay, they're going to get them. So, of course, they went in the other direction then, threw my whole night off. But, yeah, I think there may have been some tension there. The Athletic reported the other day that Matt Rule actually wanted to trade down in the first round, which would have made sense because they have a lot of needs to fill. But I guess Marty Hurney said, Derek Brown is our guy. We're going to stay there. We're going to take him. So I found that very interesting that there was a little bit of a conflict there. Not that Derek Brown is a bad prospect or anything. He's kind of a safe pick. Like, he's not going to be a bust, but taking basically a run stopper in the top 10, that's not a great use of draft capital. I think that's kind of an iffy call on my part. I think the Cardinals, I think that they had to jump for joy seeing Simmons was still there at the next pick, and they just picked him immediately.
Yeah.
I just think more value from a guy like that than a guy, even a great defensive lineman, unless you're getting Aaron Donald, somebody who can play 5 or 6 different positions, especially given the number of holes that they have on defense. I would have liked that better.
Well, he does have. I mean, yeah, we're not looking at an Aaron Donald type player, so I get what you're saying with that. But I also don't think we're looking at a Dontari Poe type player. So, but hey, you know what? If they do trade down several spots, as long as it's not too far, they probably could still get Derek Brown. Was that the thought process you think of Matt Rule?
I don't know who Rule had his eye on specifically. I think he just generally wanted to add more value, more picks. That would make sense. But again, I don't know if I would have taken any defensive tackle in the top 10. Now, Brown says he wants to be like Fletcher Cox. It's kind of his model for who he'd like to be. And if he winds up being another Fletcher Cox, then absolutely.
Sure.
There's no complaint about that at all.
Yeah.
And Hurney has had an excellent record with his first round picks. Now you go the day 2, day 3, his track record not quite so good, but he's always hit on these first round picks, and I think pretty much all the top 10 ones have been first team all pros so far. So based on that, you think that Brown's probably going to have a good career. But based on what we know, yeah, analytics, the way that you're supposed to build through the draft these days, I'm not crazy about the Brown pick. But again, like if he's Fletcher Cox, then by all means, no problem with that.
Yeah, the first three picks, I thought, and we'll get to the second rounders here in a second. The rest of the draft, yeah, I don't know. I think maybe we might have a repeat of Marty Herney's career in the draft, but the second round still looks solid. Yetur Gross Matos for Penn State, give him a little bit of an edge presence, and then Jeremy Chin, the Southern Illinois safety. So with Brown, Gross Matos, and Chin, what do you think about how those three guys are going to fit with Carolina's defense?
I like that they're kind of building the defense. Like they, there's a conflict between some people say pass rush is more important or coverage is more important, but they hit both here. I think that's the key to really building a defense now. You need to have pressure on the quarterback, but you also need to build back end, or you're just going to get absolutely toasted. I think the second round was their strongest by far. I think the Matos pick was a very good value. A lot of people had him going in the first round. He's very smooth kind of rusher, kind of similar as Brian Burns. He's not as fast. I don't expect him to make quite as big an impact as Burns did as a rookie, but I really like those two starting outside going forward. I think that's a good kind of strong foundation to build on for that line. Chin was my favorite pick of their draft easily. Everything across the board for him, his athleticism, his explosiveness, his agility, his speed, even his size, they're just all 99, 100% percentile for safeties. So I think he has a really good chance to dominate the next level. Question mark there is obviously he's coming from a small school, Southern Illinois, so it's not like he was playing LSU and Alabama every week. So the level of competition is a question mark, but once he develops, it's probably going to take a while. I feel very good about what he's going to be able to do.
Yeah, taking a look at just some excerpts from Gross Matos' profile at Ourlads. Ourlads believes one of the top defenders in the entire class. You're taking a look at somebody who has the height, length, and speed combination that is considered rare. Recorded 35 tackles for loss, 17 and a half sacks over his 2 seasons as a starter. His issues lie most notably when it comes to power and inside run defense, but he does have a top shelf toolbox that may just need some time and strength development before being an every down player. And then as far as Chin, where does he exactly fit in the secondary when you're taking a look at the makeup with the Panthers? Because I remember, of course, we talked about when we were going over the preview, we talked about how, I mean, I referenced, because I did the profile of the Panthers, that I thought Herney made a mistake when he didn't use a single pick on a defensive back last year, and you lose Bradbury and Eric Reed. Say what you want about their talent, but those are player starters for you. So very important for them to add a DB, and they added 4 of them out of the next 5 players we're going to talk about, but Chin being the top one. So how important is he to this defense now?
He's extremely important, and where he's going to play is kind of the $1 million question. I think his best role may be strong safety, kind of taking that Eric Reed role, but I could also see him playing up in the slot, and he's really big. Like most slot receivers you see are, they're not like Julio Jones or Mike Evans, who might give you trouble outside. They're a little bit smaller, a little shiftier. I think he could just swallow those guys up after a little bit of getting adjusted to the speed of the pro game. But I could also see him taking over at strong safety. The other guy who's in the running for that spot is Juston Burris, and he just hasn't started that much.
I'm a Jet fan, so I know.
Yeah. You could see like whoever wins that, maybe that's a legitimate training camp battle to watch. Whoever winds up looking better at strong safety, that'll be who it be. But I think we'll see Chin moved around a lot. He played outside corner too, I believe. He's not quite Isaiah Simmons, but he's a little diet Isaiah Simmons. You can move him around in a lot of different spaces. So I'm interested to see how they're going to use him.
A little bit more on Chin in the draft guide. 4-year starter, imposing size and length for a safety. Chin has remarkable athletic ability for his size, and he has the tools and top-notch athletic ability, but will need time to develop a little bit more consistency at the next level. Okay, now, as I was saying, you take a look at the next picks. No third round pick. So Troy Pride went round 4 from Notre Dame, the corner. Then there was Kenny Robinson, the safety, in round 5 from West Virginia. And then Stanley Thomas Oliver, the third, the cornerback from FIU in round 7. So talk about those 3 DBs. Again, 4 DBs in total. So Hurney had to make up for not taking any DBs last year. I guess he's just throwing darts at a board here. You hope not, but out of those 3 players, besides saying the obvious Pride because where he was selected, but do you have a specific one of those 3 players that you have the most faith in?
I really like Kenny Robinson. I don't know if he's going to be ready to start this year. He's still a little bit raw, but he looked really, really good at free safety when he's in the XFL briefly, as well as at West Virginia. But right now, Trey Boston is kind of has that role locked down. They just gave him a 3-year contract. He's not very good playing in the box, so I think you want to keep him in that role. So maybe Kenny Robinson stays and learns behind him for a couple of years, and then he eventually takes over there. But he's another guy I think they could move him around a little bit. I like his skill set, but he's pretty much just a safety. You could see him at either one of those 2 spots. He's not going to be like Chin, where you can see him lining up at 3 or 4 different places. But the X factor is Pride. I wouldn't have waited to the 4th round. I think Pride's probably going to be a good player at this level, but I would have taken a cornerback in the 2nd, or trade if you traded back, maybe you have a 3rd round pick
Sure.
that you can use and get a good corner. I know there were a lot of good corners, but I think waiting until the 4th round may have been a mistake. And it was definitely a mistake last year passing on all the DBs. I could see that coming was going to be a problem. And I think it was after the first night of the draft, Purney admitted, like, we know cornerback is a priority. We're going to deal with it, but it could be a problem. It really depends on how fast Pride is able to develop at this level. I'm a little concerned about his size, assuming he's going to take over James Bradbury's spot and he's not going to play nickel. The NFC South is just absolutely vicious as far as wide receivers are concerned, and it's getting even harder now. The Bucks have 2 top 10 receivers with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin.
Right.
The Saints just got Emmanuel Sanders. I know they really need help for Mike Thomas, and then you have Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley to deal with as well. I just don't know if he's quite long enough to deal with those guys one-on-one. I think that could be problematic, but he's kind of scrappy, though. That's going to help him. I don't know if it's enough, but if he works out well, that's going to be a good indicator of how this draft class is going to go, I think.
Oh, absolutely. They need one of those players, maybe specifically Pride, to make this a good, solid draft. What about when you were looking at, let's say, those 2 2nd-round draft picks, even though there's a couple of good players they added, but was there a specific corner that you said, oh, before the pick was made, here's a specific corner that I think Carolina could be targeting here?
Honestly, the whole thing is a blur. Draft night is so busy for me. I didn't have a specific name. If I did, I can't remember it. But
Okay.
it was more of a general feeling like they needed a cornerback. I might have taken cornerbacks in rounds 1 and 2 if it were up to me. I just think I'm a little bit more new age. I think the back end of the defense is more important. If you look at the way Bill Belichick has built his defenses over the years, it's really the secondary has been the constant. That's where they always thrive, and that's the places where he's willing to spend money. I think that's very telling. He gave Stephon Gilmore all that money. That's where he's willing to actually invest in his defense instead of, they don't like to pay anybody. He lets them go and gets comp picks, but he's always very certain to get that secondary strong. And it's the same thing in Baltimore. And I think those 2 probably understand how to compete right now better than anyone else as far as like the coach GM roles. So yeah, I would have taken corners earlier, but
Okay.
not for me. Obviously, there's a reason Hurney's doing this and I'm doing this.
But again, he's had some issues a little bit later on, like you said. So we'll see if the trend will will change at all with the new head coach. Pride does have 4.4 speed. He seems to be one of these players that is probably not a playmaker, but he may be able to contribute right away and be a steady player for the Panthers. Does he have to? Do you think that he's going to be forced into, just based on the way the depth chart looks right now, to play a considerable amount of snaps?
Yeah, right now he has to start opposite Dante Jackson. There's just no other, unless you're going to put the 7th rounder Thomas Oliver in there, and that's just not really feasible. I like him as a backup, but he's also the only true outside corner, that they have other than Pride right now. So I think it would be a good idea for them to sign a veteran. Fans have been calling for this for a while now, but now I think Logan Ryan's going to the Jets. You have Mukamara got signed. So there's really not that many guys left. Eli Apple may be the best one. I'm not like thrilled about him, but
No.
I think he'd be better than Dante Jackson and Troy Pride right now. And remember, Jackson got benched last year, so you're looking really, really weak at corner, which I think is probably the most difficult position to play right now, but also one of the most important. Obviously, anything that impacts the passing game is very, very important. But the cornerback wide receiver matchup specifically, I think is just so key to competing right now. And teams that doubled up at those two spots did a really good job in this draft class, because that was also the two deepest positions here. So it plays into how you need to compete, build your offense and defense in today's NFL. But it was also a good class at those spots. So if you saw your team, they're loading up at wide receiver and cornerback. They did a good job.
Well, what about the possibility of Thomas Oliver? Maybe no, converted wide receiver playing for FIU. That doesn't float your boat, I guess, huh?
I like his size better than Pride's. He's a little bit longer. He's a little taller. He's a little more tenacious. I think he's a better tackler than Pride, definitely. You never know. Like some of these guys land like Richard Sherman was a 5th or 6th round pick, and
Yeah,
he
you
just
never
turned
know.
generation. You never know. Oliver could be the best of any of these guys.
You don't ever know.
Yeah.
Okay, what about Bravion Roy? We knew they had to pick a Baylor player in the draft, and they did. So, 6th rounder. What does he bring to the table?
He's kind of like a classic space eater. I see him as a natural successor to Dontari Poe. I don't think they're gonna not play the 3-4 anymore. So you're not gonna have like last year they had Gerald McCoy and Kawan Short and then Poe in the middle. Roy's gonna back up. He's gonna be behind Derek Brown and on Short. I don't know exactly what role they have, but he's more of a classic nose tackle. Derek Brown's a little bit more versatile. I think you can use him in multiple spots. He's too big for that role. And Roy is just more of that more squat build that you usually see from a nose tackle type. I like him. I think he's very physical. I think he moves very well for someone that size. That's something that always jumps out to me when you see a defensive tackle who's agile, who moves his feet well. I think that usually translates pretty well again.
Yeah, I mean, because that's where when you're talking about run stuffing, nose tackle type players, especially ones that aren't the elite types, this is where they go in the draft. So just because he's a 6th round pick doesn't mean that he's not going to be able to contribute. He could contribute 20, 25 snaps a game if he's ready right away. And what was he? He was first Big 12, improved every year, and Rule knows him.
I think he's also underrated as a pass rusher. I think he had like 4.5 sacks last year or something like that. So it's not like he's just a one-trick pony either. I think
5.5 sacks.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. All right. Now, let's take a look at this. Now, there was a long list of free agents. I usually try to narrow it down to the named players that you recognize could have been draftable, but then also specifically guys that were targeted by the Panthers, by each team, and how much they decided to throw out there for free agency money. But instead of 2 or 3 players, this is the longest list of rookie free agents that I've seen so far. In as far as players that look like to me, they will have a chance to make the team because they had really successful college careers. Starting on offense, you've got the running back Rodney Smith from Minnesota. You have Omar Bayless from Arkansas State. His numbers were through the roof. And you've got a couple of offensive linemen. You've got a Washington State center who started 39 straight games. You got a guard from Auburn who made 32 starts. You got the Baylor offensive lineman. You got Brandon Bowen from Ohio State, who was a draftable graded player. And Giovanni Ricci, the tight end from Western Michigan. Is Bayless the one that sticks out the most?
I think Bayless is the big name, yeah. But overall, I think you're definitely right. This is maybe the strongest undrafted class that I've seen, definitely as long as I've been covering the team. Yeah, it's very rare for undrafted guys to make it. Like there's always a Tony Romo, there's a Michael Bennett, there's exceptions to the rule. But this, as far as name power goes, who
Yeah,
had a better undrafted class than the Panthers this year?
yeah,
Uh,
no one.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so Bayless has got huge numbers. That doesn't usually translate. I'm sure I haven't seen his 40 time, but I would assume that was not very good because he produced. He was one of the top receivers statistically in the nation. So I got to assume that the 40 time wasn't very good. But that hey, the guy's productive. On defense, you've even got some big names, especially a linebacker. You got Jordan Mack from Virginia, and they were a top defensive team. You got Chris Orr from Wisconsin, another top defensive team. You have David Reese from Florida. We've heard his name quite a bit. Those are three very talented linebackers.
yeah. I think they all, obviously not all of them are going to make the team, but they all may have a chance to make the team. I was a little surprised that they didn't take any linebackers, given they had an all defense draft. But maybe again, if they had traded down, they could have done that. But clearly, they had a plan. They were going to stock up on the positions that they didn't hit afterwards. They loaded up on guards and linebackers. Jordan Mack is, I think, the gem there.
Yes.
He definitely has a chance to make the team because there's no clear. Now, remember, Kuechly is gone, so you have no obvious middle linebacker. Okay, that guy is definitely going to be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like it's going to be either Shaq Thompson or Tahir Whitehead, and we don't know yet, or at least Matt Rule isn't saying yet who's going to take over Kuechly's old spot as the defensive play caller. Having Phil Snow in his ear. Either one could do well, but long term, I think there's definitely room. I'm not like particularly thrilled with Jermaine Carter, Andre Smith, the other like backup linebackers. They didn't do great last year. So there's definitely room for a couple of these guys to make the roster.
Yeah, I'm going to be very intrigued. Now, I don't know about the offensive linemen. You never know about those guys, but just again, name players. Mac. I mean, the three linebackers, Orr and Mac. I think there was a couple of guys, whether it's practice squad or making the team. I mean, I could see, especially with the practice squad up to 12 players now this year, I could see a lot of the guys that we just named being added to the team in some capacity, and that's what you're looking for anyway, isn't it? And you and if the staff is going to have 1 year where they're going to maybe bulk up on top free agents after the draft, this would be the year, considering Rule and his coaching staff just came from college. So he has a little bit of an edge knowing who these guys are.
Yeah, I think that's a very underrated element for this draft. Like it's one thing scouting them, and obviously every team spends a ton of time watching these guys on film, but it's another to have just spent an entire like several seasons watching them up close and personal, having to actually come up with a game plan against them. It's just another level to it. I specifically like Orr, given his pass rushing, what he's able to do. Now linebackers, they have to do a little bit of everything now, but if you're not good at rushing the passer, it's so much harder to stay on the field, especially when you get to third down situations, stuff like that, especially with so many teams playing nickel. So Orr and Jordan Mack, I think definitely will be on the practice squad or maybe even make the 53-man roster.
Yeah, I agree. I could see 2 or 3 of these players making the team, and a bunch more making the practice squad. So in general, the fans, again, was it? Well, first of all, has there been much of a difference between the honeymoon of bringing in the new coach and where they are now after the draft?
I don't know. I think Matt Rule kind of got he was put in a bad spot given what happened with Cam Newton. I don't think that he forced him out or anything, but given the way it unfolded, it just looked bad for him. He said a couple months ago, "Oh, I'm really looking forward to play with Cam Newton. I want him to dominate. I want him to do well." And then they wind up releasing him, but I don't think that was really all his decision. It'd be scary to think that he didn't have anything to say about that, but we just really don't know. It's kind of been a confusing offseason. We don't know who's calling the shots. I think Hurney's contract just ran out, but Matt Rule has got 7 more years, and they're giving this guy more Andy Reid. So you would think that he would have more pull, especially when it comes to that first round pick. I would have gone, okay, this is my coach. He's going to be here for 7 years. But Hurney has his own, he's going to preserve his own job. It's a pretty strange career path that he's had, but he's hanging on. He's still hanging around, and he's doing this. So good for him. But yeah, I think that he kind of got caught in the middle of this thing between fans and David Tepper with Cam Newton. That's going to take a while to wash out. If they win games, it goes away. Obviously, if you, I think right now 6 wins is a good goal for them. That seems about reasonable given the number of roster holes they have and playing in a very tough division. But if you win games, people will forget about Cam Newton. But even the way it was handled, it's going to be tough for Matt Rule to get over that. But I think he's a very high character guy. He's not Sean Payton. He's not going to be a dick when he's ahead of you. I think he's got a good personality. I think fans are going to respond to that eventually, but
Sure.
they just don't really know him right now.
Yeah.
He needs time to build that up.
Yeah, especially college coaches, because there's a ton of NFL fans that just don't follow college unless it's a major program. And a lot of these guys, a lot of these fans just don't even really know who this coach is. So you got to win. That's the most important thing. Before I let you go, what do you think is going to happen? What's your best guess on what might take place with Cam Newton?
I honestly don't know at this point. I think he may have to take a backup role, as insane as that is. There are at least a dozen quarterbacks who are starting who he's better than right now, starting with Jimmy Garoppolo and Jared Goff. But he says he's willing to consider a backup role. So if that's the case, then it'll eventually happen. But if I was him, I would just wait. Like, there's going to be an injury at some point, guarantee there's going to be a quarterback that goes down at some point. And if they're not willing to pay you then, they were never going to, it's maybe
Yeah.
a new like thing that he's dealing with that he's just kind of get blackballed. But if I was him, I would just wait for a starting job to open up, get healthy, get to 100%, get to 120%, make sure there's absolutely no questions about your shoulder or your foot. If he were to take a backup role, I think Seattle makes a lot of sense, even though Russell Wilson never misses a game. He has Greg Olson there. He has a great connection with, and they kind of do the same things that he's done over the years. They want to run the ball a lot, run the ball, then take a deep shot and play action, which is pretty much what Newton has been asked to do throughout his career. So I think that would make a lot of sense. But there's also there's so many teams that he would be a huge upgrade over. I can't believe Ron Rivera gives up a 5th-round pick for Kyle Allen, like radically inferior quarterback, and then they're not even considering taking on Newton because Dwayne Haskins is their guy. It makes no sense.
Yeah, it's like, come on, Haskins, just because you invested in a first-round draft pick, you would have to think, though, that would probably be out of Ron Rivera's hands. I mean, I'm just guessing, because why would Ron Rivera not want Cam Newton over a young quarterback? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I saw someone on Twitter say the other day that teams would rather lose with their guy than win with somebody else's, and that I think rings so true for a lot of teams. They don't want to be wrong about their guy, so
Yep.
They picked Mitch Trubisky because he seemed like a nice young man when you had Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes there. I think that's gonna. And Chicago's another team that should have gotten Cam Newton. They decided to trade for Nick Foles instead. So slight upgrade, but not really.
No. Well, like you said, it'll be interesting to see what he does if he holds out, waiting for an injury during the preseason, during camp. If there is a camp, who knows? But the league's better off with Cam Newton playing, and let's hope that when he does get his chance, he'll get his chance. It's going to happen. They all come back. They all get their chances. Let's just hope that he can stay healthy, because he probably has another good 4 or 5 years left. Maybe he could be elite for about another 2 or 3 years. But if he stays healthy, he's got another at least 5 or 6 years left, don't you think?
Absolutely. When he was healthy in the first half of 2018, he looked brilliant. And there's a couple games before the shoulder injury, kind of like just took his game down. They were down against the Eagles by 17 in the fourth quarter, and he just like put them on his back and took that. That was all Cam Newton. That was there wasn't any turnovers, there wasn't any random acts of fate. That was just Cam Newton taking a team and leading them. Then a couple weeks later, they played the Ravens, who are the top ranked defense in the league, and they just dropped 30 points on them like it was nothing. Still very, very capable when he's healthy. Nobody's able to put the same zip on the ball that he does. I still think he's kind of unparalleled in that respect. And it's if the foot is right, and what we've been able to tell based on his Instagram stories, his foot seems to be looking pretty good. If he has his mobility and he has a healthy shoulder, he's absolutely still at the very least an average starter, top 15.
All right, Tim, appreciate it. Again, managing editor for the Panthers Wire at usatoday.com. What's the latest? What do you have available on the website? Or what have you been working on for the past couple of weeks? Because it's not exactly, can't go down to camp and check out OTAs.
No OTAs going on right now. It's a challenge, It's like anybody else. You have to adjust. You have to. This is a brave new world that we're all living in. I'm just trying to learn as much as I can about these undrafted players right now. I've been watching a lot of film on them. This morning, I found some stuff on Jason Ferris, the
Yeah,
Montana Western
right.
running back, very very small school. Someone put together a very nice 10-minute highlight reel of what he did in 2019. So
Yeah,
stuff
we didn't
like
even
that.
name him.
Yeah, another great linebacker.
Yeah. All right, sounds good. That sounds like the kind of stuff though that I think fans eat up at this time of year, especially when there's not much going on. But hopefully we get some good official news soon, and then we'll be able to talk and preview training camp and so much more for the 2020 season. So Tim, thanks a lot for checking in with us again, and we'll talk to you soon.
I think.